Now let's talk about reasoning about moral issues and moral development. So I'd like you guys to think about how you might answer these questions. What is morality? Where do our morals come from? How do they develop throughout life? And are we born good? Hopefully the video that I posted you on the Yale's Baby Lab challenged maybe some of your answers to these questions. Maybe they would have been different before you had seen some of this research. But in this lab, the researchers are really trying to tackle that question of, are we born good? So babies, we think, can maybe unlock the origins of morality. They really tackle this question of, can infants tell right from wrong, and how would we know if they can? So that's some more current research that is being done on moral issues. But past research on morality is really has Lawrence Kohlberg as their founder. So Lawrence Kohlberg developed a theory of moral reasoning based on how children, adolescents, and adults responded to a large number of moral dilemmas. And Kohlberg identified 3 levels of moral reasoning, each divided into 2 stages. So there's a total of 6 stages because there are 3 levels of moral reasoning. So Kohlberg would present his participants with these moral dilemmas, and he was really more interested in respondents' reasons to their answers rather than if they said yes or no. So one example of one of the moral dilemmas is the Heinz dilemma, and I posted an activity there. You guys, you need to do this activity before moving on with this PowerPoint. So after you've completed the activity, what you should know is that Kohlberg really thought that a person could argue that Heinz should or should not steal the drug and be at any of Kohlberg's stages of moral reasoning. So it was just that their reasons for stealing the drug would differ at each stage of moral reasoning. So let's talk about Kohlberg's different levels and different stages. So Kohlberg's theory, again, consists of 3 levels, each with 2 stages. So level 1 is known as the pre-conventional level. At this level, moral reasoning is based on external forces. So in stage 1, this is more an obedience orientation. So the individual is wanting to obey authority. So obedience is almost exclusively controlled by rewards and punishments. So stage 1 individuals do what authorities say is right to avoid being punished. So it's this kind of a punishment orientation. They're really considering obedience to authority. So an example of someone in stage 1, they might respond to the Heinz dilemma by saying he shouldn't steal the drug because he might get caught and be punished. So they're avoiding punishment. In stage 2, this is more an instrumental orientation. So here people look out for their own needs. They're nice to others because they expect a favor to be returned in the future. So it's more of a pleasure-seeking orientation. The action is determined by one's own needs. So an example of a response here would be someone saying it won't do Heinz any good to steal the drug because his wife will be dead by the time he gets out of jail anyway. So they're just looking out for his own self-interest. So now we can move on to level 2. This is the conventional level. Here, adolescents and adults look to society's norms for moral guidance. So in stage 3, the focus is on interpersonal norms. So moral reasoning is based on winning the approval of others. You can think of this as the good boy, good girl orientation. So action is determined by the approval of their peer group. So an example response here would be, he shouldn't steal the drug because others will think he is a thief, and his wife will not want to be saved by a thief. Stage 4 is social system morality. So this is where adolescents and adults believe that social roles, expectations, and laws exist to maintain order within society and promote the good of all people. So here the idea is, well, he should uphold the law at all costs. He should follow social rules. So an example would be, although his wife needs the drug, he should not break the law to get it. His wife's condition doesn't justify stealing. So it's this idea that there's a traditional morality of authority. So then we can move on to the post-conventional level. This is level 3. Here, moral reasoning is based on a personal moral code. So the emphasis is no longer on external forces. So in stage 5, this is really the social contract, where moral reasoning is based on the belief that laws are for the good of all members of society. So it's this social contract orientation. Rules are open to question, but they need to be upheld for the good of the community. So an example response would be, he should not steal the drug. The druggist's response is unfair, but mutual respect for the rights of others must be maintained. And then last is stage 6, and this is based on universal ethical principles. So here, abstract principles like justice, compassion, and equality are forming the basis of a personal code. And these might sometimes conflict with society's expectations and laws. So it's this morality of individual principles. A high value is going to be placed on justice, dignity, equality. So an example response would be, he should steal the drug, but then he should alert authorities he has done it. He will have to face a penalty, but he will have saved a human life, and that's more important. So it's this focus on self-chosen ethical principles. Okay, so just a quick recap. The pre-conventional morality level is level 1. The 2 stages are avoiding punishment and then gaining reward. Level 2 is conventional morality. The 2 stages here are gaining approval and basically, does your duty support society, or are you trying to avoid dishonor or guilt? And then finally is the post-conventional morality. So stage 5 would be affirming agreed upon rights. Like here, everyone agrees that people have the right to live. That would be a stage 5 type of response. And then stage 6 would be these abstract autonomous moral principles. So like saving a life takes precedence over everything else, including the law. So Kohlberg said that individuals move progressively through the 6 stages. So they go in sequential order, and you cannot skip stages. Now, there is some support for Kohlberg's theory. We see that it's true, individuals do move through the 6 stages in the order listed, and only in that order. So longitudinal studies show us that. We see that moral reasoning is linked with moral behavior. So the higher level you have for moral reasoning, the more moral your behavior. But we see that moral reasoning is also inconsistent across situations. And then certain cultures do progress through the 6-stage sequence. And this somewhat supports Kohlberg's claim of universality. He thought everyone went through these stages in the same way. But what we know now is that that's not necessarily the case. We do actually see some cultural differences. So let's talk about these cultural differences in moral reasoning. Some cultures do not stress the individual rights and justice that's so central to Kohlberg's theory. So his theory works really well with more like American culture, which comes out of this Judeo-Christian theology, but not all cultures come out of this type of theology. So, for example, Hindus stress caring and one's duty to others more so than these individual rights and justice. So cultures espousing different moral principles may differently resolve these moral dilemmas. So Kohlberg's stages really are not universal. His theory applies pretty well to more Western philosophical and religious traditions, but not so well to others. So Carol Gilligan was actually Kohlberg's student, and she criticized Kohlberg's theory on the grounds that it was biased toward a justice point of view of moral reasoning. And so she thought that this applies more to men than it does to women. She thought women's moral reasoning was about moral issues was going to be more rooted in this concern for others or this ethics of care. So research actually suggests, though, that there are very small gender differences here. Both males and females use justice and a care responsibility approach depending on the circumstances. So there was a comprehensive meta-analysis done, and this showed that, yes, boys and men tended to get slightly higher scores on problems that emphasized justice, whereas girls and women tended to get slightly higher scores on problems that emphasized caring. So we do see some gender differences, but they're pretty small. So when it comes to promoting moral reasoning, what we know is that exposure to more advanced moral reasoning through observations of others, thinking and discussion of moral issues with peers, teachers, and parents can help adolescents reevaluate their thinking and become more sophisticated. We also know that involvement in religion influences moral reasoning through specific religious values, as well as involvement in a larger community. So adolescents who feel free to express their own opinions and discuss moral issues with their parents tend to have more mature moral reasoning. So having those open discussions of moral dilemmas can be particularly helpful in increasing moral reasoning, which would also be linked to increasing moral behavior.